Hi everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Caro and this is the first installment in what will hopefully be a series called Art History for Artists. But let me quickly tell you about me. I've been doing digital art for about 5 years, working on my iPad Pro using the software Procreate. But before I started drawing again, I got a degree in art history. Now, my knowledge of art history constantly helps me in creating my illustrations. To me, it is so vitally important to know what came before me, because you're always referencing something or someone, be it on purpose or not. Things like composition, color, or perspective still follow more or less the same rules as they did 500 years ago. In this series, I want to look at works of famous artists and figure out what makes their work so special. Then, I want to try and incorporate those special elements into my own art and style. My style is already heavily influenced by my favorite artists and art periods, such as the Renaissance or the Art Nouveau. In this video, I won't be focusing on either of those. Instead, I chose probably one of the most famous female artists of all time, Frida Kahlo. I picked Frida for this video not just because she's so famous, but because the illustrations I love to do are quite similar to her style of painting. I love doing female portraits, and I also really like to incorporate plants and flowers into my paintings. But of course, there's also a ton of differences between mine and Frida's works. Before I start painting, I would like to tell you a little bit about Frida and her life as an artist. Frida is now being called a surrealist artist, like Dalí or Magritte, but she never categorized herself as such. Ever since her childhood, Frida struggled with her health, which caused her to spend long periods of time in bed. There, she started to develop her love of painting. When she was 19, she painted her first self-portrait. This would be the first one of a lifelong series of self-portraits. 55 of her 143 works are self-portraits. Her paintings are always very personal. It's where she deals with her trauma, be it from a terrible car accident in her teens, multiple miscarriages in her adulthood, or the ups and downs of her marriage with the fellow artist Diego Rivera. She also incorporates her political ideas and her pride and love for her home country Mexico in her works. Sadly, she was only really recognized as an artist after her death. During her lifetime, she mostly stood in the artistic shadow of her famous husband. Gladly, nowadays she's not only an icon of art, but is also celebrated for her fashion and her vibrant personality. Let's now take a closer look at Frida's art. This being the first video in this series, I wanted to make it not too challenging for me, and choose a series of portraits that are quite similar. They all have a similar composition, which shows Frida in a three-quarter pose, gazing at us with a stern look in her eyes. This composition is quite popular in portraiture, because it exudes a sort of royal composure, whilst the gaze at the viewer is still very direct and challenging. In all 4 paintings, Frida is depicted in front of a wall of plants. She often chooses plants that are native to Mexico. That, combined with her traditional clothing and accessories, show her deep love for her country. The third element I want to pick up from these portraits is the colors. Frida uses very earthy tones, ranging from yellows, oranges and greens to darker browns. She often adds some red accents to her makeup or accessories, which contrast nicely with the green background and makes Frida stand out. And of course, I have to address the animals. Frida had a lot of pets that regularly made an appearance in her paintings, from cats and dogs to a deer, monkeys and multiple birds. As with all of the elements of her works, these animals can be seen as symbols. Especially her monkeys were very important to Frida, and you can often see them lovingly hugging or embracing her. All in all, I want to try and incorporate 4 different elements of Frida's art into my illustration. First, the pose and the fact that it's a self-portrait. Second, the greenery behind her. Third, the earthy color scheme. At last, the animals, and especially the emotional connection to them, which seemed like the perfect excuse to paint my 2 beautiful little kittens. So let's start drawing. Just to let you know, I'm using the 6B pencil in Procreate for my sketch. As the pose was already pretty clear, I only needed to figure out how to pose my little kittens around me. I mainly wanted to focus on two things. One would be to represent their personalities, and two, to have a pleasing overall composition. Bruce, my little black cat, is very drawn to me, and I think often sees himself as a protector of sorts. So I wanted to show him close to me and kind of curving his tail above me. Harvey, my grey one on the other hand, is very independent and almost royal. We call him our little spoiled prince. That's why I chose to show him quite proud and looking into the distance. Together, they frame my figure quite well, and after I play around with the size of the different elements, I take some reference pictures and draw the final sketch. After that's done, it's time to do some color sketches. I wanted to stay close to the earthy tones Frida uses in her work, which is quite far from the usual pinks and blues that I like to use. After a bit of tweaking, I landed on the third one. So let's paint. I'm using one of my favorite brushes to paint, which is called Larapuna, and has a very beautiful painterly texture. I'm going to be using this brush throughout the whole illustration. First, I'm blocking in all the colors, so there's no white canvas showing. I'm using the color picker to get the exact colors I want from my thumbnail. When that's all done, I use a cool-toned grayish purple to do the first layer of shading. Now I'm going in closer to start defining my shapes. Whilst I'm doing that, I constantly turn on the sketch layer and turn it off again to see how much definition I still need. It's very important to me to stay quite loose in most of the painting and only define the elements that need defining. To blend my colors, I turn down the opacity of my brush to about 30% and pick and blend adjacent colors until I'm happy. If you'd like me to do an in-depth video about how I blend and how I paint, just let me know in the comments, please. So now it's just a lot of painting, trying to bring out the lights and the darks and define the elements that need to be defined. Because I'm not really used to painting animals, I tried really hard to follow my reference when painting the cats. Overall, this painting took about 4 hours to make. And here we are, all done. Let's check again what I learned from Frida and if I will be using any of it going forward. First was the pose. This one was the easiest for me to copy because I paint a lot of portraits and I also love to do a really nice, direct gaze at the viewer. Second were the plants. Another one that came quite easy to me. I love incorporating plants into my paintings because they can bring a really nice organic texture. Third element was the color. I have to admit this one was a bit tricky. I'm not really used to using warm, earthy tones, but I quite like how it turned out. I think especially adding in that bright turquoise sky really helped to make the colors stand out. Fourth, and most importantly, were the animals. This was the challenge that brought me the most joy, because I had an emotional connection to my subject. I think I will definitely continue to incorporate animals into my illustrations, because they bring a different kind of character, different form, textures into your illustration and can make it more interesting. Now at the end of the video I can say it was quite a successful experiment, and I'm really looking forward to choosing another artist, maybe someone that's a little bit further away from my own aesthetic. What do you guys think? Do you think I did a good job? What artists are inspiring you? Please let me know in the comments so I can check them out. For more illustrations, art and cat pictures, follow me over on Instagram at @CaraDeCreator. You can find the link to my Instagram down below, as well as all the links to the paintings that I referenced. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!